Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? See, this I like. This is at least one form of dialogue between two content creators. And me and Nadar have done this before. Nadar will release a video. I'll respond to it. He'll respond. But at least it's a dialogue. And what are we talking about? We're talking about the Iraqi dinar. This is something I wish would happen more often in the dinar community. So let's get into this video so I can answer Nadar's questions.
All right, guys. Nadar from the East. Let's respond to some people. After respect, with respect, of course, guys, with everything. Pimpy. In the conversation, me and you, I got the video ready for you and I can publish it tomorrow if you want. In the conversation, me and you, I asked you why the dinar Kuwait is so strong. And you said Kuwait dinar is so strong because they have a lot of oil. So that means that dinar depend on oil. Kuwait has nothing else. Doesn't export. Import is more, it's like 90% more than export, okay? So it's a small country, depend on oil. That's all what they have. They have the desert around.
Well, that's not all. So here we go again. We're comparing apples to oranges. Yeah, Kuwait has a lot of oil. 90% of their budget relies on it. But if oil prices dropped tomorrow, Kuwait would be fine for a long time, unlike Iraq. There's a huge difference between the two countries. Kuwait has a relatively stable and well-diversified economy, unlike Iraq. The country has a small population, unlike Iraq, and significant oil reserves, which have provided a solid foundation for economic growth. They use the money that they sell from oil to diversify incomes and make it a more stable country. Additionally, Kuwait has a sovereign wealth fund, which we heard Iraq wants to start doing, but they don't have one yet. The Kuwait Investment Authority, which is one of the largest in the world, this fund has been instrumental in stabilizing the country's economy and contributing to the strength of its currency. So in other words, in this wealth fund, there's people out there that are managing the money. They are invested in several different things to help stabilize their own currency. So even though 90% of their budget comes from the sales of oil, they have other means of revenue, unlike Iraq. Now, again, this is something Iraq wants to do. The government of Kuwait has implemented prudent fiscal policies, have contributed to the stability and strength of its currency. The country has maintained a budget surplus for many years, which has helped to build its foreign reserves and reduce its reliance on external borrowing. That's not the case with Iraq. They have a ton of debt because of external borrowing, and although their reserves have been building up way past the standard, which is a good thing, that has not always been the case. The fiscal discipline? No, Iraq has none. Has enhanced investors' confidence in the Kuwait dinar and supported its value in international markets, unlike the Iraqi dinar, where no other countries have very much confidence in the Iraqi dinar. Of course, they're trying to change all this. Kuwait is a major oil producer with sustainable reserves that have contributed significantly to its wealth. The country's oil exports generate substantial revenues, which has bolstered its economy and supported the value of its currency. Furthermore, Kuwait oil wealth has allowed it to invest in infrastructure, development, diversification of its economy, further enhancing the strength of Kuwait's dinar. Iraq is just working on this. So this is the difference between Kuwait and Iraq. Kuwait is well off. They're already established. Their economy is strengthened. There's diversification with their investment funds. They have a strong infrastructure. These are all things that Iraq does not have, but is trying to accomplish. So it's one thing to rely so much on oil sales if your country has a stable government, the people are stable, they have a wealth fund that they're well invested in more than just themselves, but other investments around the world. Their infrastructure is sound. The people have high quality of life. None of that can be applied to Iraq. That's the thing. They're trying to get to where Kuwait is. So no, you can't just say, oh, oil reserves. Because like I said, if oil prices drop down to $20 a barrel, then Iraq is ass out. They have nothing else to rely on. Unlike Kuwait, who's diversified.
They have us who's, helping them a lot, believe it or not. Now you come to Iraq, you say, hey, Iraq is dependent on oil. That's why their dinar is so weak and it's unstable and it's all that and all that. Venezuela was strong before this shit happened with the economist. And, if you go back to more normal, Venezuela will go back normal too. What they have besides oil.
I don't get why you're bringing it up. When it comes to Venezuela, only 40% of their budget relies on oil sales. But if they go back to normal and we remove all of the restrictions, all of the sanctions off them, then of course they're going to become wealthier.
Their money used to be strong too. You remember that? So listen, this thing about the oil, yes, oil is like gold. We call it the black gold. We call it the black gold. That mean, let me ask you something. If you take the petroleum dollar tomorrow, which is we call it the petroleum dollars, how the dollar's gonna feel?
If I take them, how are they going to feel? Pretty damn good, if you ask me.
It's gonna just jump down. That's correct or not?
Are you asking me, is the dollar going to crash? In my opinion, we're going to see a drop, especially if everybody starts de-dollarizing. But, that remains to be seen. But what you're talking about is things that could happen in the future, whether they de-dollarize and the dollar crashes, whether Iraq becomes diversified, infrastructure is taken care of, they have great physical monetary policies. You keep talking about in the future. Well, in the future, then my opinion would change. But for now, I'm talking about the now, where we are now, present time. Iraq is nowhere like Kuwait.
If you disagree with me, go ahead and disagree. But you know better. I'm right what I'm saying. All right? Now you're saying, the second thing you're saying, Iraq economy almost collapsed in 2020. Show me one economy in the world, 2019 and 20, didn't almost collapse. One economy, when it was a pandemic, Corona going on, and everything else.
I could talk about a handful of them, but here's the thing. If you remember me talking about the Vietnam Dong, what did I say in 2020? Vietnam had the second best economy in the world because they fared very well against the pandemic. The reason why they weren't stronger is because other countries, their ports were closed down. There wasn't a lot of workers, so they were pretty stagnant, but strong. In 2021, they took a little bit of a hit at the beginning of the year, but then turned around to rebound hardcore. So that's just one. There's your one, but I'll name others. So it's funny you should ask that question because I was just bringing this up to somebody else. New Zealand has allowed the country to maintain a stable economy despite the pandemic. According to the World Bank, New Zealand's economy is expected to grow by 4.1%. That was back as a forecast in 2021. Australia has experienced a comparatively mild economic impact. The Australian government has implemented economic stimulus packages to support businesses and households, which has helped to mitigate the negative effects from the pandemic. So they fared very well. Taiwan GDP growth is projected to be 3.1 in 2021. So we're talking about this is after they've been hit by the RONA, their forecast for 2021. And then, of course, Vietnam's economy has been relatively stable, with growth projected to be at 6.8%. And that was in 2021, 6.8%. Look at that growth. Finland economy is expected to grow by 3.5% in 2021. So there were several economies that did pretty good, even though they were experiencing the RONA. So I'm not saying that countries all around the world weren't affected. They were. What did they do to protect itself? And if they had a stable economy in the first place, that can help them fare through the pandemic.
Show me one country didn't almost like you said, collapse. That's it. That's all my question. The only reason Iraq almost collapsed because everything stopped. 2019 and 20. everything stopped. The import stopped, the export stopped, the oil production stopped, everything stopped, and because of the pandemic. And that's why they almost collapsed. It didn't collapse because they couldn't do it, who can sell it, who couldn't, no. Everybody who was in the same bag, everybody.
Again, you keep bringing up all these other countries. I'm only talking about Iraq. I never said that Iraq wasn't affected by the coronavirus. They were. But the point I was trying to make, regardless if it was a coronavirus, regardless of whatever it was, people keep saying, well, they have all of this oil, so the currency should be stronger. It's not just that they have oil, man. It takes a lot more. They're not diversified. Their physical monetary policies suck. They just now are going to establish a wealth fund for the people. So all these are contributing factors to their value of their currency. So then you explain to me, if they have all this oil, it shouldn't have made a difference if it was coronavirus or not. They have all of this oil, right? And they should be so rich. Then why did they have a financial crisis that almost caused their economy to collapse? Don't say because of the coronavirus didn't take or add how much oil Iraq had. They still had the same amount of oil. The coronavirus had nothing to do with it. So they have all this oil, regardless of the coronavirus, regardless of whatever's going on out there. How did their economy almost collapse? So it's not just, here's all my oil, give me a lot of money. There's more to it than that. Your government plays a huge role in the country's economy. How it's strengthened, how it's operated, what they do with the money, all plays a huge part. You seen what I said about Kuwait? Look how financially secure Kuwait is. That's why their currency is so valuable. It isn't just the oil. There are other contributing factors. Their budget is in the surplus every year. Iraq has been borrowing money for 2 decades. They have a ton of external and internal debt. Kuwait doesn't, because they don't have to borrow money for a deficit. Although for Iraq, congratulations, they have a 10 billion dinar surplus from 2023, but we're only talking about 1 year. What about all the years prior to that? There's a huge difference. That's why you can't compare Kuwait all the time to Iraq. There's no comparison. When Iraq gets all the crap together, they have infrastructure taken care of. They have great fiscal and monetary policy. They've established a wealth fund that's very diversified. And all the other fun-loving things that come along with having a strong currency. Then we could talk about it. But right now, you can't compare them. It's like throwing in an amateur boxer against Mike Tyson. No, there's no comparison, man. I know lots of people like to compare Kuwait to Iraq, but stop doing that. Seriously, stop. There's no comparison.
264 countries, it was in the same bag. And when you talk about the dinar doesn't depend on the dollar, I mean on the dollar, dinar doesn't depend on oil, it does. All over the world.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. Iraq depends on oil sales way too much just to fund their budget. There's nothing else they could fall back on. That's terrible. That's a bad situation. Kuwait doesn't just rely on oil sales. Do you see the difference? That's all Iraq has for now, where Kuwait is diversified. They have a wealth trust fund that's being managed by one of the best strategic companies in the world when it comes to investing. It's a very large group. They have other things to rely on other than just oil sales, unlike Iraq.
From the United States, it's like their gold, and you see. Take the petroleum from the dollar, and you see. Take the oil from Kuwait, and you see. Take the oil from Venezuela, and you see.
Okay. Take the oil from Iraq, and you'll see. I mean, what's your point you're trying to make? The point is, I'm talking about Iraq specifically. Iraq is nowhere as set up as Kuwait is. You're comparing apples and oranges. Sure, they're both fruit, but 2 different flavor. So I hope that answers your question, my friend. Let me know if you got more. I'll catch you later. I'm out.